Constance, freedom fighter. She was an aristocrat turned suffragist, Irish rebel and political leader. We are all familiar with that Andy Warhol image of Che Guevara, but how many of us know what Constance Markievicsz looked like? There's a picture of her right there. Madame Markievicz was a true warrior whose story of bravery should be taught in to every schoolchild in every school, in my opinion. In keeping with the suffragette focus this month, and rather belatedly to mark St. Patrick's Day, the spotlight today is on Constance's herstory as one of the greatest women revolutionaries of all time. Aristocratic Constance Markievicz was born Constance Gore Booth in 1868 to Anglo-Irish landlord and explorer Sir Henry Gore Booth and Lady Georgina Hill. Constance was 10 when the Irish famine started and watched her father provide food for his tenants in Sligo, which deeply affected her and instilled in her a lifelong concern and empathy for the poor. It just shows how important it is to set an example to your kids from an early age, doesn't it? As a young woman and trainee artist in London, Constance joined the NUWSS, which was the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies. She met her husband, who was an artist, Casimir Markievicz, in Paris, and the pair settled in Dublin in 1903 and had a daughter together called Maeve. But, you know, the quiet life of an upper-class woman was not enough for Constance, however. It was in Dublin that she became involved with revolutionary political figures and thinkers. The nationalist divide was gaining ground at the time. The question of Irish home rule was a hot topic on both sides of the Irish Sea. By 1908, Constance was convinced of the cause and joined Sinn Féin and Daughters of Ireland, a revolutionary women's movement. She was also active in the suffrage campaign at this time, joining her sister Eva Gore Booth in Manchester to oppose Winston Churchill's re-election to Parliament. And it worked, as Churchill lost to another candidate in that particular by-election. There was certainly a crossover between the women's suffrage movement and Irish republicanism, and Constance straddled both these movements. For her, being an Irish woman meant to be doubly enslaved by virtue of gender, but also by the English rulers. This is where she differed from the leaders of the Women's Social and Political Union, who saw women's suffrage as a single issue divorced from any wider political causes. Things ramped up in 1911. Constance started by attending demonstrations against English rule and committed acts of disorder such as desecrating pictures of the King and Queen and burning British flags. This is probably what caused the rift in her marriage. In 1913, her husband Casimir moved back to Ukraine, separating from her, although they did remain cordial throughout her life. So during the Easter Rising of 1916, Constance fought with the Irish Citizens' Army, and it was speculated that she shot and killed a policeman. She was never definitively linked to this murder, but she was very central to the fighting at St. Stephen's Green, even helping to plan the uprising. As a result, Constance was arrested and pleaded guilty to causing disaffection among the civil population of His Majesty. Defiantly, she told the court, "I went out to fight for Ireland's freedom, and it doesn't matter what happens to me. I did what I thought was right, and I stand by it." From her cell, she heard the executions of 14 of her comrades by firing squad and awaited her turn. But being a woman saved her life. Her execution sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, to which she retorted, "I do wish your lot had the decency to shoot me." But she didn't spend her life in prison, as it turns out. She spent less than a year incarcerated. She was transferred from Dublin to England and released in 1917 after the government granted those involved in the rising with an amnesty. And there's an image of St. Stephen's Green in the aftermath of the rising. Constance's values and political affiliations were, if anything, strengthened by her conviction and her time in jail. She was incarcerated in 1918 and actually campaigned for election from her prison cell. In 1918, she was elected to Parliament, representing Dublin as a Sinn Féin MP, but she isn't formally recognised as being the first woman MP because she didn't take her seat in the House of Commons, in line with the Sinn Féin policy at the time. That title of the first woman MP has always gone to Nancy Astor as a result. So she served as Minister for Labour from 1919 to 1922, and incredibly she remained the only Irish female cabinet minister, until 1979. But her time as a fighter hadn't come to an end. In 1922, she continued to fight for Irish independence, helping the Republicans during the Civil War and going to prison again, this time hunger striking. Her relentless fight for Irish independence continued until the day she died, somewhat prematurely at 59 of peritonitis. She was refused a state funeral by Parliament, but she got something that she probably would have preferred, which was a people's funeral, where 300,000 people lined up to view and pay their respects to her body laid out in the rotunda in Dublin. So despite being born into wealth and privilege, Constance gave up all her wealth, selling her jewellery and assets to fund the cause she believed in. She was prepared to die for it too. So whatever you think about the IRA cause and its methods, I think it's hard not to admire the inimitable, there we are, bravery and conviction of Constance Markievicz. Now, also, let's not forget that she remained devoted to the poor her entire life, working tirelessly to set up soup kitchens and hand-deliver turf to inhabitants of the slum tenements. Her portrait now hangs in the House of Commons. I do wonder what she thinks of that, looking down. So, if anyone's familiar with the Chieftains version of the Easterising ballad The Foggy Dew, which is actually sung by Sinead O'Connor, I do always find this a very haunting rendition of the song, and I'm reminded of it when I speak about Constance, because I think she would have appreciated a woman singing this song so proudly. Sinead as well, was another Irish woman who wasn't afraid to speak out against oppression and corruption. So it does seem fitting. And I will just end on these lines from the song. The world did gaze with deep amaze at those fearless men but few, who bore the fight that freedom's light might shine through the foggy dew. And just to end, I want to remind you all that one woman's terrorist is another woman's freedom fighter, according to the saying. So thank you very much for listening. And that's it for this month.